Though born in New York, railroad magnate Henry Huntington practically built the LA area, which is why you hear the name everywhere. While handling railroads and controlling utilities in Southern California, he was also working with William Hertrich to develop his newly bought ranch into a garden of rare and exotic plants. At the same time, he was building his world-class art collection under the influence of his aunt and second wife, Arabella Huntington. They moved into their residence in 1914, and it is now one of several art galleries on the property. Also finally able to devote himself to a lifelong love of books, Henry amassed one of the largest collections of English and American rarities, which stands as one of the most famous research libraries in the world. The lily ponds were the first garden developed in 1904. At the time, they had to be heated to keep the giant-leafed Amazon water lily alive during the somewhat cool Southern California winters. The pond water is now circulated and recycled. This part of the garden has an abundance of life, including flowering lotus, papyrus, turtles, koi, and ducks. This gorgeous Japanese garden was started in 1912 when they had transported in some very mature trees and a beautiful 5-room house from a local Japanese tea garden. The house is made from natural materials such as wood and paper, and it's an example of a type of upper-class home built in Japan through the 1800s. Replete with stocked koi ponds and lush foliage such as junipers, Japanese red pine, wisteria, fruit trees, and a lovely bridge that they won't let you walk on, this garden is a wonderful place to just sit and think. In 1968, they added a courtyard which houses a meditative sand and rock garden and a bonsai exhibition area. There's also an area with viewing stones, which I love because you can rub your hands all over them. Henry Huntington died in 1927, but the gardens have continued to be developed. Some of the areas developed after his death include the subtropical and Australian gardens, the herb garden, and more recently, the greenhouse conservatory, the children's garden, and the Chinese garden. This Chinese garden, called the Garden of Flowering Fragrance, was opened in 2008 and is the newest addition to the Huntington. It'll still be several years before all of the phases are completed. Future plans for this garden include a lakeside performance hall, a small climate-controlled space to display decorative items, and a viewing pavilion. The desert garden here is one of the oldest and largest in the entire world. This is a very important conservation collection. It started out as a tiny garden in 1907, but has become a 10-acre display which shows off over 5,000 desert plants and succulents. There's also a conservatory which houses around 3,000 of the more delicate succulents which might not survive if exposed to too much cold or water. Their collection of the endangered golden barrel cactus is considered one of the largest and finest in the world. Most of these were planted from seed and are nearly 100 years old. Our last stop today is the Rose Garden, which was started in 1908. Originally planted as a display garden, this garden had an overhaul in the 1970s and was reorganized as a collection garden. It's now arranged historically to follow the development of roses beginning in ancient times with the Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans.